And we're back.
Welcome to episode 5 of Form Check Friday. I'm Seth. You probably know who I am if you're here. And this is...
I'm Miana. I'm his wife, and I've been powerlifting for like 12 years now.
Allegedly to both of those statements.
Yeah.
But this is Form Check Friday, so we are going to be checking out some lifts that people have submitted into a thread I posted last night in Team Activated to be part of this YouTube Cyber. And the whole point of running these Form Check Fridays is that if you can see what we're looking at in terms of lifts and what we're thinking in terms of fixing them, you can hopefully take that and go better apply it to either yourself and your own training or clients that you're working with if you are a coach. And if you do not know what Team Activated is an online community that I have created with the whole goal of giving lifters the best bang for the buck powerlifting coaching available on earth. You can basically ask any question you have, post any lift that you have, get feedback directly from me and Miana every single day of the week. I even do this like Saturdays and Sundays. It's usually like the last thing I do every night is I'll hop in here and make sure that everything is covered just so that people can get feedback as quickly as possible. But back to the Form Check Friday. What we did this week is talking to Pierre about this. He thought it'd be a really good idea to not just like show lifts out of context, but to get people who have been here for a while to post the lifts that they posted when they first started to what they're doing now. And I think the reason this is really cool is obviously it's cool to see progress, but you can see as we're talking about what they were doing before, as we talk about what they're doing now and what we're continuing to get them to work on, it's going to help you guys understand that there is layers to figuring out powerlifting, because it's not like you just need to fix one thing once and then that's it for your entire career. You're probably going to have to figure out a couple things like a couple times a month, because things, sometimes you get lackadaisical, sometimes we get lazy, sometimes new weak points pop up as we address old weak points. So I figured that we might as well get started. We got some guys in here who are newer, who are just tossing one video up. A bunch of guys in here that are tossing videos up from way back when and now. So where do you want to start? Bottom, top?
Ooh, I was thinking we could possibly start with the bottom.
Got some freak in here.
Some freak?
We clarified his name pronunciation.
What is it?
Freak. I can't say it.
Well,
Don't. He said
so
it
you
phonetically.
didn't clarify it.
He attempted to clarify his name pronunciation.
Well,
but
how did he write it? Like, did he write it phonetically or did he say it?
like FRE-AK.
Friak.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so Miana with her affluent heritage compared to me and my redneckness, better at saying fancy names. So let's take a look at this. He is a strongman prepping for an axle bar show. He doesn't have an old deadlift to go along with this guy, but with the axle deadlift, I think big thing to note is that number one, it's going to be further away from you. Number two, it's going to be really stiff, so there ain't much slack pull going on.
And he's got bands on here too.
Yeah.
He's actually doing a really good job of pushing through or pushing into the band.
Yes.
But go back to that starting position. What do you think?
I actually really like this based on what his pull used to look like, because he used to be
Yeah.
like a little bit more stiff leggy, not a lot of leg drive.
Mm-hmm.
And what's cool too with the axle bar being so stiff is you can see that he is taking the slack out of himself insanely freaking well, because if you're watching it, the bar just goes and there isn't really any shifting around through his torso, through his upper body. And I think, again, like the only thing that I want to continue harping on with him is we just need to rocket those hamstrings freaking hard.
Yeah.
Because we do have the little bit of, classic strongman, knees want to shove under. And if the knees want to shove under the bar, what's happening there is it's letting the hamstring shorten without the hamstrings needing to contribute to moving the bar and creating hip extension. So we can kind of get them to a little bit more favorable leverage position. So all I want to keep doing here is keep on the hams. But the fact that he has this much freaking band tension on the bar and has that little double knee band.
I was actually just going to say, like, you can tell how much he's working on his start position because of how well he is pushing through that band tension. Like, had he not had such a good leg drive out of the bottom, he probably would have just gotten
crumpled by the band.
Crumpled as soon as the bands kicked in. But
so
no, I think
I am very, very, very stoked with this. And I think, like, knowing where he started on the deadlift bar to seeing this off an axle, like, this is freaking cool for me to see. And one of the, again, like, this is me being selfish, but my favorite part of the team is like getting to look at, where guys are going. This is Brandon. But before we do that, Today is the very last day that you can grab one of these shirts from activatedperformance.net. So if you want to grab one, make sure you do it before they are gone. And the reason I'm not wearing mine right now is both of them are in the laundry because they are absolutely my freaking favorite shirt to train in, because the material is so perfect for gripping the squat bar, grabbing the bench pad, and it is nice and durable too. So you don't have to worry about the shit getting stretched out and funky if you actually train in it. Code YouTube will save you 10%. He's been in here. He's one of the original joiners. And Brandon has a history of being a bit of a ooga booga lifter. This is one of his first benches that he posted.
Week 0.
Week 0. You can see all the squirming.
Oh, this is super squirmy.
I'm excited.
What were the things that we told him to
I think
change?
the biggest one I think at the first was just like, quit wiggling.
It's very wiggly. Even like his hand, like when he is actually benching, you can see it kind of wiggling around.
Got the squirming. Like the squirming's something, again, it's gonna be a hard habit to break for him, but we gotta keep on him.
But it translates when he's actually lifting as well.
Yes. And then again, we have that butt lift unrack. That weird little jump into the eccentric versus just pulling into tension. And I think that, again, it's like the butt lift unrack isn't helping him with leg drive here. Going to go to where he's actually unracking. But then he has 0 lats up the unrack, has this weird catch. And then it turns into just like a super sloppy, super rushed touch. And this is something that, again, like it's not really strength right here in this video because he's a super, 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 super freaking strong kid. But the biggest thing that we've tried to do is just like tighten up setup, tighten up leg drive, get more lat, more serratus into that unrack, and clean up that bottom end touch. And I mean, this is freaking ridiculously way higher quality than before. The next thing I'm kind of like trying to continue harping him on is this hand position and wrist position.
Yeah.
But what's cool is like when we tighten up the setup,
I was just going to say this. The first thing that I noticed was how much his hand and wrist have cleaned up since that first one. It's still not perfect, but it's been, I guess, 6 months. Can't expect it to be like overnight, but it is so much better than before.
And this is him this last week. We're trying to get him no wrist wraps, getting the bar a little bit lower, just to kind of practice having that better stack. And I think it is just, you can see the no wrist wraps is really exposing it because he was someone that's been a little bit reliant to find stability. But I think, again, like what I want to try to do here is you can kind of see his fingers. They're a little bit loosey-goosey, especially at the top. And I think you just made number one priority is just clamping the hands down. And you can see, too, he's got big hands. So he kind of has the problem or some of the problem to what I do where I have a giant-ass mitt so I can, put the bar high and put the bar low. For me, myself, what I like to do is try to get it as low as I can to the thumb side, even if I'm going thumb around. And that's going to mean that when I'm benching, the bar is going to have less leverage over my wrist versus if the bar is way up here, it can kind of get wandery. It looks like the bar is a little bit high up on his thumb side there. And it's kind of causing a little bit more roll than we might want to have. Yeah. I was hoping he put his platform bench that he just did at his meet in here, but it doesn't look like he did that because he beat this number on the platform, I think, by like close to 20 pounds, and it looked so much better. So I was hoping to see that one in here, but again, like going to this 347 double, it's 2 pounds heavier and way better. And what I'm kind of thinking now that we're getting sorted, we have tension, it's like we can start thinking about what needs more work and what needs kind of more chug. And if we look at rep 2, what's going on here, paying attention to elbows, paying attention to where things are going, we can kind of see we have that little bit of elbow wanting to wander backwards versus just kind of staying that guided right down. So what we're really cranking on with him a lot is rolling tricep extensions to get those triceps strong in that more flexed elbow position so we can continue to load in the triceps, and also getting him to run a little bit more incliney-ish work to get more clavicular pec so you don't have to transfer out to that sternal pec as much in the bottom, and you can keep a little bit more stacked.
Say something? So one thing that I noticed on both this video that we're watching right now, both videos from, I guess, recent, he's doing a really good job of that hand and wrist on the first rep. And you can see both videos, he kind of like dumps back before the second rep.
Yes.
Did you notice that?
Yes, yes.
So what?
Squeeze!
Exactly. So that's just what I was going to say is don't get lazy in the time that you're finishing the press. Because you're like, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of doubles, triples, anything more than a single, you're going to want to be set up for that next rep. So don't get lazy as you're finishing in and then expect yourself to be able to like completely retighten back up into the next one.
Speaking of that,
did he just do it again?
I
just missed it.
This is one of the first squats he felt, or posted, not first squats he felt. It says felt bad in the title, but that's
was it the first squat he felt?
Probably not the first one he's ever taken. But speaking of getting lazy, shakes his head, gets lazy in the upper back, wiggles around, and then rep 2 gets kind of gross, kind of forward as well. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, the big thing here is we try to clean up his walkout, clean up his setup so he wasn't squirming, get the brace on sooner so that he isn't trying to have to like get collected once he's out here. Because if you can have more tension before with the end rack, you'll be able to carry more tension through the walkout, carry more tension through the whole setup, and then just let go of upper back is another thing that we tried to break him of the habit of. But other thing that we really, really, really hammered on is his stance and his foot position relative to where he is depth-wise. He's a big dude. He's getting in his own way a little bit. So what I wanted to try to do is I wanted to get him into heeled shoes to let a little bit more forward knee travel happen. And that made a big difference in addition to just running some hip prep to let him actually get down to the bottom where he needs to be to get a squat in on meet day. Mm-hmm. And then walkout way cleaner.
So much
tension
better.
Way cleaner. I think he could be a little bit less lazy on the head there through the walkout still, but actually hitting depth.
There you go.
Smacking her. Way prettier squat. Again, I wish he posted his platform numbers with the platform list with the meet he just did, because he definitely is a guy that peaked well and performed better on the platform than in training. But it's just prettier. And again, you guys can see like the depth wise, look tracking knees compared to the other rep. Little bit more forward knee travel, just lets him sit down into the hips instead of just being in his own way. So if you guys are kind of wondering, like, could heeled shoes be for you? If you're someone that already has a shit ton of forward knee and you don't feel like you need more quad, need more knee, then you're probably good in flats. If you're someone like this that is binding up and could use more knee, heels might be worth experimenting with to see if they can help you out. So we got Chris here next, and Chris is brand new. I think he joined like 2 days ago.
Oh,
and
sick.
Checking out some squats. I looked at this video because he posted it in the main thread already.
Oh, I haven't seen it. What are we thinking?
Well, first off, it's pretty light, so it's going to be hard to say too much. But looking at this,
head and neck posture is the first thing I'm noticing. What about you?
You talk about this. I'm going to open a new window over there. I'm going to pull up his.
What are we looking for?
He sent me his like most recent squat PR, or he posted it in the main thread. I'm going to pull that over just because that kind of gives some more context in terms of talking about weak points. But go ahead.
Oh, well, it's just over.
Oh, well. What are you thinking?
Well, I noticed that his head and neck posture was like really far forward in both the walkout and in his squat now. So I would just want to see a better head pack right off the bat.
Yep.
He is also doing the thing where he breathes up before he does his rep, which I'm not a big fan of, because you're basically like losing all of your ab tension every time you do that.
And all your upper back.
And all your upper back. It's just like, it's generally a really bad habit that lifters have. What you want to do instead, I like to use the cue of pack down. So like you're breathing down into your diaphragm instead of breathing up into the bar.
And pulling everything down to enhance how hard you can breathe down into that belt.
Mm-hmm.
But what I wanted to ask, seeing that it's a little bit submaximal, a little bit away from where he would see real breakdown, but kind of looking at where he is transitioning out of the hole and kind of where that little bit of stick starts to show. I asked, is he someone that when it does get hard, do his knees get further forward through the mid-range? And then he dropped this 465 in here. Oh, and the sound's on. Got to get rid of that. But drop this and watch the knees. And they skirt forward.
Neat.
So what's happening here, if those knees are skirting forward, it's basically the nervous system going, hey, asshole, your hips aren't strong enough to continue driving up. We need to shove into more quad to make up for that hip. Yeah. So this is one where I definitely would be wanting to do some hip building. And what we talked about, he's dealing with a lot of SI joint gunk right now that we're giving him some stuff to sort out. But what I want to do is, number one, run single leg RDLs to kind of help with that force transfer through the SI. And then once those single leg RDLs are solid, I'd want to explore some wider stance camber bar good mornings to really, really, really try to touch those hips well. And if you can run it now without things getting funky, some cambered bar squats or cambered bar box squats could also be very, very, very valuable. Excuse me, to force him to stay in those hips better. But other than that, this is a pretty squat. And I'm actually very, very, very happy with how well the quads are working, how well the knees are working. I think we just brought some butt cheek up to supplement that. We would be in a much better place to be able to grind things out, as well as, you know, make sure the SI joint is less angry at him. Because a lot of times when SI joints are angry, it's like the low back is trying to act like a hip because the hip isn't doing its thing. And if we can get the hip to do its thing, the low back doesn't have to pretend to be a hip anymore. But we're going to look at Jesse now. Jesse is one of my actual like online one-on-one clients that I full on coach. And
I'll let you do this then.
This is his bench, and he's phenomenal. Like, I freaking love him. He's a lineman for a living, so he knows how to work hard. He's one of the guys, whatever I get his check-ins, he posts literally every single video that he does through the week. Like every set, every warm-up, everything is posted. And for me, that is so valuable because number one, it means he's paying attention. And number two, it means that I can just see everything on the way up and see if there is anything weird going on. But this is his first bench he ever sent me. And yeah, what are you thinking? Because I already know what I said about this.
He hasn't started yet. He looks pretty loosey-goosey on that unrack.
Yep. And again, like he's trying to find lats, but what I want you guys to notice is he's set up, he's getting under the bar now, and then he swings way out there.
Yeah.
So his unrack has to be like 1.5 feet long, which is going to make it hard to kind of really find good tension. So you're kind of handicapped by the position you're unracking out of.
And like what's kind of interesting is if you go back to his unrack, like what you want to see when someone's doing any sort of like lift out is you want to see like a hard stop. You can see like the bar never actually stops moving laterally before he starts benching.
Yeah, just kind of drifting into nothingness.
Just drifts, yeah.
And the biggest thing here setup wise was just getting him scooted down, finding more lat, and then learning to, I guess I don't know which hand is going to be in frame when I edit this, but learning to pull until you almost like feel the bar fall into a pocket of lat and serratus wonderfulness. And then it makes the eccentric feel so much better if you can find that tension. Now, the other thing we had to clean up a ton is he had years of really, really, really icky shoulder gunk. And can't see too much here because of the comparison on the right side to the left side, but you got to see how he's kind of trying to drift into it. And it's not even the socket moving, it's the scap moving off. And that was a lot of needing to clean up actual active shoulder IR ability to be able to pull into the bottom of shoulder IR, shoulder socket IR, and not dump the scap around and crank on shit. But if we're looking at where he is now, pretty much an entire extra plate on the bar. But look how much further he is under the bench. J's are a little bit higher to make up for it, but look at all that tension. And look at how freaking hard solid that is.
Look at that hard stop.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, Jesse.
That elbow drift, gone. Triceps are way stronger to support that elbow drift, and his shoulders aren't jacked up in the slightest anymore.
So good.
And a lot of like the shoulder jackness, it did take some figuring out with like how long it had been going on to kind of pull back the layers to get it sorted. But he did everything he needed to do along the way, and I'm very stoked. And like I get excited running all of my check-ins, but like running Jesse's check-in, it's always fun to see. So
I know like you knew exactly what these videos were gonna look like, but I just like love the fact that I was like, oh, like that bar is still drifting, and he just went, held it for a second. You could tell he was in his lats. So good, good job, Jesse.
Yep. This is Calvin. I think he's been in here for a couple of weeks now.
Like 2 weeks.
Seen a couple, and he's been trying to run these high bar 1.5s. And I've seen this already, so let me take the wheel.
Oh, I'm taking the wheel. Go back to the start. He looks like he's binding up really hard.
Yes.
And I'm looking at it. I think this might be a case where he's just kind of like fighting his own body to get down there. But
yes. And what I was going to say too is with him trying the high bar 1.5s, his knees feel a little bit beat up during this. And what kind of makes me think that we don't have enough knee travel to support the high bar is that in order to make it work, he's really
He's had sort of
crumpling
like,
through
yeah.
the upper back to make up for the leverages to let him get to the bottom.
This might be a case where like a heeled
shoe would
would
for
be
sure
actually
help.
good. Yeah.
But what I kind of talked to him about was that low bar feels better. He's able to keep a better stack on his low bar. So I think just for now, like he's getting somewhat close to running a meet. I think that just not running the high bars for now and then making sure that we're getting good quad work in, getting good knee travel work in, getting good ankle work in outside of actual squats would make this better in the future. And it would kind of clean up what is looking like a little bit of either a range deficiency there
I was gonna say it
or the
looks like
ability
it's
to
his
control.
ankle.
Yeah. But sometimes with ankles as well, it's not just like a straight up, can your ankle go there on a squat? It's more a matter of whether or not you have neurological control of the knee and hip to let the brain give you the freedom to go forward knee. So one of my favorite things that I recommended for him is running a reverse banded hack squat with feet pretty low on the platform, being okay with heels coming up, because that's going to let us really get into the knee forward position and learn to control that well. The reverse band will make sure it's not too gnarly. But then the heels coming up, you're going to think, well, Seth, that isn't very good for ankles. But if you let the heels come up, then the concentric try to drive those suckers down, it becomes a massive, active, loaded ankle stretch that's going to carry over really well to being able to control that when we're under the squat bar.
Yeah.
So I think this is kind of a case of the high bar with where he is, where everything's going. We don't necessarily, I don't think it's going to be a great movement to run right now, but I want the goal to be to clean this stuff up so that he can maintain a better upper back on high bar. And like, as far as upper back, obviously I think I want more upper back tension, but I do think that right now what's going on is more a result of down here, screwing up there, then up there, screwing up down here.
Yeah, absolutely. I like his shoes though.
I
think the Vivo Barefoots, I think, maybe. They're nice.
I love how everyone's just seeing that I have Mozart playlists going on in the background when I'm working.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Mozart. Time and place.
So we got Zach, and he's got 2 bench videos, one in October when he first hopped in here, and one more recent.
Oh yeah, okay. So this was the first one, right? This is OG. It's actually not bad. Go back. Oh, I don't want that. There's a little bit of a dump happening through his shoulders.
It's a little sketchier as he goes in. A little bit TNG'd.
Yeah.
And this is the old one. I wanted to play a bit of it.
You play a trick on me? Okay, we're so much better right now.
Yes.
You play. I was gonna say it's not that bad. It's just like a little touch and go-y.
But I think what's going on here that I'm still going to yell out about is this is something I talk about a lot in here is that on max effort, we don't want to sacrifice rep quality for weight on the bar because you can see he's kind of going to that TNG for 2.
He's dumping a bit to get down there too.
And going to that really kind of bounce dumpy grossness on 3. Like rep 1, I'm really happy with everything that we talked about because the legs are better, the chest hold up is better, especially with that buffalo bar. But then it's like on 2 and on 3, it's like if we can no longer keep the standard, we're not really expressing better max effort work if we're deviating standard to continue going. And I don't want to keep teaching kind of bad habits.
Can I raise my hand for a second?
Yeah.
I was going to say what I thought he was doing really well here, and I was honestly going to give him the kudos if this was his original one. His leg drive, honestly, is really good.
And what I want you to watch too is, not you, but people at home, is where the chest is on this rep 1 and touchdown is meeting the bar. There is a little bit of drop after, but if you compare to where he started on a straight bar, so it's easier. Right?
So glad you don't do that anymore.
Yes. And
no, we're so much better now. It's okay. Yeah.
And you know what's cool too is Zach someone that doesn't post in here a ton. So I'm assuming that a lot of, because I talked about this bench way back when, but I'm assuming a lot of what he's done is just like watching the advice I'm giving other people and kind of learning and taking from it.
Yeah. So much better now. Because this is a perfect example of a sink that is not
in detention.
And it's not in his benefit at all. It's so much better now.
Because he's just like losing off, losing stretch reflex, losing leg drive, losing ribcage position, and it's just getting in his own way right here. And again, I think like the biggest thing here is I just want to just be stricter on as we're continuing to push the
Yeah.
max effort. And what I want to pay attention to is as he feels like he does need to go more TNG, what is happening? And you can kind of see that he's stuttering outwards. So like the elbows are not tucked,
Yeah.
but stacked well for his wider grip. But then they have to fling out into that sternal pec. So again, this is a sign that we probably need a little bit more tricep still, maybe a little bit close grip incline as a secondary. And I bet that bottom end would clean up and he'd feel like he can control it in a whole lot better. And again, it's one of those things too where if people see like elbows flinging out, they want to think it's weak lats. And the lats amount of tension they need during a bench press is so freaking low. Like lats are important, but they don't need to be strong to bench press. And that leverage change is more a reflection of where the pec is strong versus where the pec isn't strong. If he's, in here and it's not strong enough clavicular to kind of support that groove, he's going to have to fling out into sternal to make that work. So it's going to be a little bit of just like getting that clavicular pec, and a close grip incline is a sick way to do it. Austin has been in here for a couple of months, and he is someone that I have yelled at extensively.
I appreciate the video edit. Is he doing it how it started, how it's going?
Yeah.
Look at that head posture. Don't love it. I already don't like the hip position.
So Austin has a history of multiply.
Oh.
And
okay.
When he first started here, it's kind of looking like he's trying to multiply squat without a suit on because he's pretty wide. He's just flinging back into nothingness with no tension, kind of losing all ab and brace as he's doing
trying to find his briefs.
And then in the hole, it gets kind of loosey-goosey, sloppy, floppy going on because he flung back out of tension and lost the brace. And waiting for the video to transition versus clicking into nothing. This was a recent big squat PR that he took, and this brace so much better. He's actually using his quads.
Oh yeah, look at that.
If his brace wasn't good, he would not have been able to grind out that well without losing torso. Now the only thing that
he's looking at his shoulder elbow position.
Yes, that's the only other thing that I kind of want to start digging out of is he's really like Mark Ripito, like winged back cover of Starting Strength book looking elbow position. And I think that the biggest thing that could help him here is just trying to close this gap just a little bit.
Yeah.
And
his depth looks so much better too, by the way.
Yeah. But he's given himself the space to get down there.
Yeah.
But with this, what I want to be thinking about is this is a spot where I would give pretend you're a bodybuilder doing a front double bicep and try to like scoop the serratus, scoop the lats, scoop everything forward. And obviously we don't want to scoop and fully protract so that we lose a rear delt shelf. But if we can get everything pulled forward, we can drive the bar harder into those rear delts to give us a better shelf. We're going to have more serratus integrating into the brace. Scaps are going to be held to the rib cage better. And I bet he could find a little bit more chug yet from there. Now, we got Anthony coming up. And Anthony, if you guys watched it, I did like a full 10-minute breakdown on the first deadlift he posted talking about when rounding can be positive versus negative. And this was a case when rounding probably wasn't positive. I might just skip ahead to where it gets gross.
3-minute video, yeah.
There's a lot in here, but you got to see rounded, then just jerks into no tension, gets more round, finishes, and clearly, if he's able to do that, he does have a strong back because his back is rounded, and he's able to then recover and unround. If it was a back weakness, you just crumple and die and not be able to go from there. But a lot of this was just learning how to create more tension off the floor so that he wasn't just springing into just more rounding, getting that brace set better, and then trying to get a little bit more leg drive and quad into the bottom. You ready?
Oh, it's so much better.
So much better. And there still is room to go for sure. I go to his...
It's less herky-jerky, and that's
more
kind of
recent deficit. But he's actually creating tension. I think the biggest thing from this one to the next one is you can kind of see as he's wedging in, he's just pushing everything forward without any pulling the bar back. And if you are doing this in the deadlift wedge, we want the push forward because we need push forward to get you into the bar. but we also need to have the bar anchored with lats so it's not rolling away from him and getting further away than it needs to be. Now, if we go to where the deficit was, like the deficit's going to be a harder position for sure. It's gonna expose that back even more. But look at the tension in the setup. Look at how he has lats pulling into the bar, no more kick. And like there was maybe like a half a millimeter where we probably could have squeezed out a little bit more lat.
So much better.
But considering this is a deficit, I'm freaking stoked.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that I want to keep on working with him is just learning to have that simultaneous pull with lats, push with the hips into more quad tension, because he's kind of flinging his knees just forward into space versus looking like he's flinging into tension in the quads. And I think the biggest thing that I want to kind of cue here is just more toe pressure, because if you have more toe pressure, that's going to force the quads to contract, which is going to mean that your knees are going to be going into a little bit more tension. So you're going to have more quads sooner, and he should be able to make that break a whole lot cleaner.
I think one thing that's really cool about this too is seeing all of these is it takes time to make all these technical changes, and it's it might take him another couple months before we do see exactly what we want to see, but it's this progress is clear and obvious,
Yeah, and I think with judging progress on lifts too, it's I'm never expecting to give someone a cue or say try this accessory and see it fixed the very next week. But what I am suspecting to see is hey, is it going in the right direction?
Yeah.
And if it's going in the right direction, we know it's going to pan out if we give it the time to pan out.
Yeah.
If it ain't going in the right direction, we can figure out a better way to do it. But we got Matt here.
Hey, Matt.
And this is one where if I'm working with a really advanced lifter and they have kind of funky looking positioning technique, I usually don't want to change it because it's clearly working for them. But if I'm working with a newer lifter and they are just pterodactyling their bench, kind of turning into a no pec JM press, then I want to try to clean that up earlier on so that they don't get 3 years down the road and they're like, shit, I wish I would have built pecs 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So this is one of the ones where he's clearly strong enough to handle this in this position.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that I'm trying to do with Matt is get him to the point where his pecs are actually able to let him have some spread, get some more pec into the bottom so it doesn't have to be this awkward pterodactyl JM press looking thing. And because he's doing this to avoid the pecs, I guess I'll go to the bench just so we're know to look at it. The pecs aren't quite in shape to handle that yet, but he's really, really, really doing a good job of learning to actually load them.
Oh, it's so much better.
And this is his lighter session, so it's not going to be nearly the same in loading. But the positioning, he's actually working with himself. And what we're doing to make this more available is we are just cranking on a ton of flared dumbbell work. We're doing some high boards with more flare. We're doing some flared slingshot work, so he's learning to pull into the slingshot. And it's going to be one of those things where it's if a guy's avoided pecs and gotten a kind of decent bench avoiding pecs, getting more pecs into it will help. But if he's avoided pecs and he hasn't been doing a ton of pec work, it's going to take time to get it strong enough. And what we're talking about here is that this might not be as strong this very second.
It will be so much stronger.
I guarantee in 3 years, in 5 years,
1 year,
he will be 100 pounds ahead of where he would have been had he kept doing the pterodactyl.
If he had kept pterodactyling, he probably would have maxed out at a 200-pound bench in 3 years. But this, I'm
we got room to build.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So very, very, very stoked to see the positioning and also the mindset to be I'm okay with feeling a little bit weaker in the short term to get better long-term progress, because so many lifters will, need to make changes in order to get better. And then they're afraid of taking weight off the bar. And then because they're afraid of taking the weight off the bar to make the necessary changes, whether that's technique, whether that's positioning, whether that is like me right now with trying to improve body composition. If I was afraid of getting weaker through this cut, I would not have the potential to do what I'm going to do. And obviously I haven't done it yet. But I know that getting weaker right now is going to be necessary so that I can be a better lifter, more competitive lifter in the future. And I think him having this mindset that early where he's okay with pulling some pounds off to make things better in the future, that's going to make it so much easier for him to make progress when he is someone that's pressing in the 3s and 4s.
Yeah.
Now, looking back to his squat on September 9th, 2024.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, look at those elbows.
Look at those elbows. little bit of soft leg going on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, whoa. Look at that depth, though.
So he has hypermobility,
Whew.
like actual diagnosed hypermobility. So
Yeah.
he's got room. But
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Good
one
for
of the
him.
one of the big things with that is that we've really prioritized on learning to control tension versus just going where he can
Yes.
go. Because like it's sick to squat that deep, but I don't think squatting that deep is helping in the context of if you want to be a good powerlifter.
No.
And the other note of that is he's got so much shoulder room, he can kind of like put his arms wherever. And if you're watching where these elbows go through the set, they're kind of, going everywhere, right? So we've done a lot of trying to, number one, is get the legs a little bit more control through the hips so that he doesn't feel the need to bottom out to get there. And then number two, you can see that he's a pretty long dude. And I think because of his flexibility, he's like almost learned to try to stay too upright to take away from loading the back a little bit. So the biggest things that I've tried to do with his squat is number one, again, control that bottom end. But number two, make his back strong as shit so he can tolerate a little bit more hinge well and better work with his levers, plus getting his upper back sorted out a little bit better as well there with that elbow position too. But
Yeah.
going here, you got 50 more pounds on the bar. Look at the bows.
So much better.
Figuring out his unrack. But so much better stacked. Legs way less soft. I wish those were from the same angle so you could see the hinge, but way
So
more
much
hinge.
better.
And he's actually like able to get his hips to help him out of the bottom versus just having no hip and just being like, please quads, please take me to the top. And what we're kind of seeing here as well is he does have that little bit of knee rolling in now that we are getting the squat to be more hippie. And again, a lot of people want to think that knee roll in is this stuff being weak to not keep the knees out, but that really isn't the case because what is happening is that if the knees are rolling in, what is going to be getting into a less mechanically advantageous position, what's getting into a more advantageous position, and those legs going in is going to be helping the adductors so the adductors don't have to work as hard. And then when the knees come in, it's going to be forcing more work onto the glute max. So this is telling us that glute max is relatively weaker than adductors, potentially hamstrings as well. So we've just been getting him to crank on some adductor work, crank on bringing those guys up. He's pulling sumo right now to get that going even better. But I think that again, if we just keep on making adductors strong, he's going to be able to better use that more hinged position and better drive out of the bottom without needing to have that little bit of knee waver. And stuff is going to keep on getting better.
Oh, this was yesterday?
Yep. But I don't think that might be a wrong video because it doesn't have the hair.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was trying. I was like, yeah. Sorry.
Anyways, so going on to Roddy. Roddy's another guy that hopped in here recently, and his first squat he showed. I haven't seen this one yet, but looking at his squat the other week, what we're seeing there is he's had some jacked up knees. Knees were hurty. So he's having trouble really getting into them, and not being able to get in the knees was getting in the way of him being able to feel solid in the bottom. And depending on where he's competing, I still might want to find a little bit more depth. But seeing that this is something where getting a little bit more forward knee travel has cleaned up where he was so much and is letting him get down there better. You can still see he's pushing back away from the knee.
Yeah.
But he has like massive knee flexion deficits, massive tibia rotation deficits.
Yeah.
So I think this is just going to be a matter of like, okay, we need to keep cleaning up the knees, keep on the knee work to let him not be in his own way as he's approaching depth. I think that's going to be the biggest difference maker. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you think that he should eventually change his stance?
He might want to bring it narrower, but I think knowing his knees, I don't think narrower could be supported right now.
Yes,
but I think
in the long term,
looking at his leverages, I think narrower could be better if we can get the knees going where they need to go to support a narrower stance.
So not tomorrow, but
not tomorrow, but future.
Yeah,
a couple months down the road, I want to see a narrower stance.
Please don't bring your stance in 6 inches and hurt yourself tomorrow. But like long term, if he can, work on everything like through his knees and hips.
Yep, and the other kind of like nitpicking things too that, again, I think knees should be number one priority. But I think looking at his brace, upper back set, everything, it's not really like all that locked together. And you can see he's like flicking into spinal extension coming out of the hole. And what I'd want to do is get out of the habit of looking at your feet during the walkout so you can keep that head solid, pull head back, pull bar forward, get all that locked in, and then have all that tension that you can then lead into ab tension, pulling that rib cage down, and just get that better brace set, because that should probably let the hips work a little bit better underneath him as well. But I think as far as like weak points accessories, it's just going to be like trying to just be diligent in dialing in pick, dialing in tension, dialing in brace, and then making sure he's on his knee prep hard. And that should mean that the squat looks a lot prettier. I know he's got a meet coming up here shortly, so we got to hammer that prep work really hard to get things going. But I think seeing like week 1 versus week 2, it's definitely going in the right direction for him.
Don't judge my depth. I'm going to judge your depth.
Deanna's going to judge your depth, Justin. I'm sorry.
Just because of that. What does his depth look like?
So he's long.
He is long.
Which isn't a pass for not squatting deep, because, I mean, Keelan can squat really deep. Now, I haven't seen too many videos from him, so what I'd want to kind of know in context to this is depth something that is more achievable with, 365 instead of 565? And if depth is more achievable with 365 than 565, that's going to be a matter of just needing to kind of reset your weight standards in the short term, so that we can actually be getting to depth and training at depth and getting good work in. Because if depth is something that gets worse as weights go up, we're kind of just teaching ourselves to continue squatting high as weights go up. Yes.
My biggest concern, though, other than depth, which I definitely do agree, like maybe dial the weight back if you can hit depth with lighter weights. But the biggest thing that I'm looking at is his T-spine, C-spine, basically. It looks like he has his elbows back, but I think that there's something going on with like maybe pec tightness or like rotator cuff tightness, because his chest looks like almost concave.
Yes. So I think this is going to be a little bit too of what's going on. Is I think this positioning might mean that his torso angle is potentially a little bit weirder than it should be or could be. And that might be getting in the way of depth as well. 100%. So I think the biggest thing that I probably want to be doing here is, I posted these a bunch on both YouTube and Instagram, but doing like dislocations with a PVC pipe or a band over top of an incline bench. So really trying to open chest up, get rib cage tall while lengthening those pecs.
Yeah.
That can be really good for creating the length necessary to get into a better squat bar position. And I bet if you can get his upper sternum or upper rib cage a little bit higher, head packed a little bit back sooner, I think he could tolerate a little bit more torso angle. And knowing how long his torso is, I think that actually, and how long he is, I think that might help us with finding a more secure bottom end, which might actually open up the depth without needing to change anything.
This is something that I see a lot with
me since my pec surgery.
Yeah. I'm also reminded of a lot of like ex-athletes that we saw down in Florida and that kind of thing, where it's like really internally rotated, and it's like, it's not just technique. This is like a postural, like he needs to work on his mobility is what I'm getting at. Both like outside of training and warming up. He just really needs to work on opening up.
Yep.
This isn't like a tomorrow thing. This is going to be like,
it's going to be like we need to put work in. I think the biggest thing that like powerlifters get wrong with flexibility stuff is that they want to do like one stretch before their squat day, and then they wonder, why isn't it getting better? Stretching doesn't work. And they make Instagram posts about how stretching doesn't work and stretching is a waste of time. But it's like with flexibility, you need to do it often enough for enough time duration and with enough intensity to see changes. And usually when a guy's looking like this, to make as much change as possible, I'd want him doing something to open up those pecs like a couple times a day, every single freaking day, and until it gets better. And then once it's better, we can drop it down to more of a maintenance schedule so it doesn't go away. But in the short term, we gotta clean that pec, clean that thoracic extension up.
Yeah.
And I think like big things that might help for training would be, again, we want to run those incline dislocations as warm up, as prep, and running a dumbbell pec fly like Miana was just clapping about.
That's because I'm wanting to say that for
especially on an ELITEFTS shoulder saver pad.
So good.
That was like the biggest thing for me in getting my kind of squat back after the pec surgeries, was running the flies on shoulder saver pads so I can let those scaps kind of roll around the pad, drive chest higher, get more length. And that can be a really good way to get stretch with training, get stronger in that position. So that
Yeah.
when you are in that new position under the squat bar, you can contract against the bar and
Right.
not feel like you're going to
And
die.
like I would just make sure that like the work that he's doing on the pecs shoulders, like when he is introducing it as like accessory movements and like adding load to it, that he's not going too heavy too quick, and like making sure that, like it could even be like a 5 or a 10, and just like really control that bottom end, and like make sure there's like going as far as you can, control without pain, and like just slowly building that up.
Yeah, because when I'm running a accessory for the flexibility intent, I usually like to start people out with like sets of 15, 20, because going 15,
Mhm.
20 is going to limit load a little bit. And then I don't even really like often prescribe a true RPE to it. I just want to like make it feel like you have more range of motion by the end of the set than the beginning. And if you can do that, then we know it's going to be helping you gain flexibility in the long term.
Mhm.
But guys, I think that
That's
is
it.
what we got for today. So thank you to everyone who submitted videos for this Form Check Friday. If you feel like you want help like this, want eyes on your lifts, want feedback on your training, want to understand what you need to do to drive progress, hit link below, join the team because it is sick.
Yeah. We want to have you.